So, the mission and intent. Our mission is to regenerate our ecological, social, and economic environments via human health, and to make occupant health a measurable deliverable for all buildings and spaces, to leverage technology to enable access, scale, and affordability. And repeated a little bit, but said a little bit differently, is in our intent, which is to catalyze a rich diversity of solutions adapted to place by doing the following. Shift the focus away from prescriptive design to measured results. Integrate with existing certifications to simplify workflows. Leverage cloud software to enable scale and affordability. Make building data social to create positive, useful feedback. So I'm going to go into those a little bit, which is again going to harken back to our acronym and what each of those letters is really meant to represent. So again, we're the only real-time performance-based building standard, and going through each one of these letters first, starting with R, that represents regenerative. So let's talk a little bit about this concept first by going back to this idea of what we had mentioned before, sustainability. The biosphere does not prioritize the ability for organisms to remain the same. If we did that, the Earth would still only have single-cell organisms like you see here. And I think most of us now would agree, and we're in the camp of understanding that this is not an appropriate word for what we're trying to achieve with respect to healing ourselves and healing the planet. By definition, sustain, it means to stay the same. And if we were to prioritize that in nature, we wouldn't be here. We would still look like this guy. So having the ability to regenerate, to change, and to evolve is therefore critical. And the biosphere knows this. Its nature has been evolving and doing this naturally all along. And the byproduct, of course, is evolution. And in human history, this concept is far older than our current green or sustainability movement, however you want to call it. And it's taken a lot of different forms and many different names. Some call it rebirth. Some might call it reincarnation. It's all really cultural expressions of the same idea. And it's a very natural concept in Eastern cultures and to a lot of indigenous cultures alike. So we're actually really excited to see how the uptick of what our industry is collectively recognizing and identifying as being regenerative design versus this old school idea of sustainable design. So the next three letters, the E, the S, the E, are standing for ecological, social, and economic. And these are grouped together for a reason. For these, I think a lot of us have seen this diagram before. This is the Venn diagram. And these three themes or sets are often the topic when we talk about trying to face and solve problems that face us environmentally. This diagram, I'm sure you've seen it before during presentations, and somebody is talking about the triple bottom line or the bottom line. And it's a very convenient diagram because it's showing all possible logical relations between the different sets, in this case, society, ecology, and economy, conveniently huddled together. And somewhere in the middle is this utopian state that we like to refer to as sustainability. And somehow the nesting of those three ideas in this diagram is supposed to solve all of our problems. But there's a fundamental flaw with this concept when we talk about regenerative design or design that's intended to help save ourselves and heal the planet, because the assumption here is that all of these sets are equal. And in reality, they're not. They're actually something that looks a little bit more like this. They're subsets of one another, each sort of nested into each other. And this is a much more realistic diagram to talk about how we're organized, especially when we look at who is in the middle of this, which is, of course, us, people. We're at the center of these nested sets. And if you notice, what's the closest to us? Well, our economy. And I'm not saying this is how it's always been, but it's certainly a very good diagram to describe where we are today. And so economy and people, this is where we're really the most connected. And for good or ill, the reality is we're a consumer-based generation. We just aren't as connected to that subset of ecology that's way out there. It's so far beyond and disconnected from us that it's made us really dismissive of environmental issues. And instead, we become increasingly concerned and distracted and driven by our economy. So we have been trying to work from the outside in for the last 40 years, trying to convince and impact people in this way, save the environment, save the polar bears, save the rainforest. It's an incredibly difficult conversation to have when people are so far away from it. So as our current state of the planet and our wavering health now attests, this is a really long, difficult journey that's proving to be way too slow. So what we really need to do is start with ourselves and take a good hard look at what is it that we can actually do that makes it easier for us to actually help the environment and heal ourselves in a way that makes sense. So it's far easier if you start talking to people and present the case for taking care of your health first. Protecting your health, the health of your family, your friends. You see, now we've made it personal. So asking people if they care about their health is a much easier conversation to have. And as a result, the next step is finding ways, in fact, demanding ways, to protect one's health. So this then speaks to that point of economic safety, and that's that middle ring. Because illness is not only devastating, but it's costly. It affects our economic growth, a society's sustainability, its ability to be prosperous, its ability to be stable rather than unstable. And this is really starting to ask the bigger question. It starts to form the bigger picture of how do we fix our ecology and our planet and identify those aspects that are making us ill. So this ends up being a lot easier and a far more feasible argument to build the case for something that's so basic as healthy buildings and then pushing through to ecology from a place that's a lot more personal. And then that brings us to the last letter in the acronym, which is T, standing for targets. So why targets? Reset is biomimetic, and that's our philosophy. And what we mean by biomimetic is really taken from the term that was coined by Otto Schmidt in the 1950s, and that is the imitation of models, systems, and elements of nature for the purpose of solving complex human problems. And I want to give a nod to Julian Vincent, who put that definition together so elegantly. And really what we're trying to do is we're trying to tell people that because we're using nature as a model, we're not going to have any prescribed paths or checklists. There's only one target that we're concerned with, and that is environmental health, starting with people and our indoor air quality. So going back again to this idea of the biosphere and biomimicry, the biosphere is a fantastic teacher. It builds on incremental success and positive feedback. It cares about one thing and one thing only, and that's life, and more life, as much of it and as diverse as possible. It's its only driving force. So Reset, this was a key influence in Reset and our philosophy as well, how we developed Reset and how we were compelled to create a similar construct. So in plain English, we too do not have any checklists. We don't have a prescribed path. We really have allowed you as architects, designers, engineers, developers to choose and innovate your own path and make your own way. Only to us, as far as Reset is concerned, do the results matter. So there is, yes, a set of goals or targets rather that you have to achieve, but how you get there, whatever road, we don't care as long as you get there. So we're really just throwing the doors wide open to innovation, allowing you to do what you do best, which is design and innovate and come up with new ways of solving complex problems. So the goal is a healthy building, and however you get there is up to you and your team. And giving you license to do that, I think, is where Reset is really proud. So that brings us to the next module, the Reset approach.